In the summer of 1982, a young traffic cop in Florida vanished while on duty. She was last seen pulling over a speeding car on a lonely highway. Then she was gone. For 12 years, her case haunted the town. No body, no car, no answers. Her family begged for help, but the trail was cold. Then in 1994, during construction on a remote patch of land, workers made a shocking discovery: a rusted police patrol car, buried deep underground. Inside was a skeleton still wearing a badge. The truth behind how she ended up there is darker than anyone imagined, and the story of who put her in that grave would break the whole town apart. Watch until the end to discover the shocking truth, and comment below. Where do you think the investigation first went wrong? In 1982, Florida had many young officers patrolling the roads, but one stood out. She was only in her 20s, yet she had already built a strong reputation. People in town knew her as friendly, professional, and fearless. She cared about her community and worked hard to prove herself in a job that wasn't easy. Her family was proud of her. She was the first in her family to wear the badge. Her mother kept a framed picture of her in uniform on the living room wall. Her father told neighbors, "That's my girl. She protects all of us." Her younger brother bragged at school that his sister was a cop. She had plans too. She wanted to work her way up in the department, maybe even become a detective. She had ambition, and everyone around her saw it. But more than that, she had heart. She cared deeply about people, about doing the right thing. Her fellow officers liked working with her. She was steady, calm, and quick-thinking. Even when drivers shouted or cursed during traffic stops, she stayed professional. She had that rare mix of kindness and toughness. But most of all, she believed in the badge. She believed that wearing the uniform meant something bigger than herself. She often told friends, "If I don't stand up, then who will?" In 1982, she had her whole life in front of her. She had a career starting strong, a family supporting her, and a community that trusted her. Nobody could have imagined that within hours, everything would change. Because on a hot summer night, during what seemed like a routine shift, this young officer would vanish. She would drive out onto the highway and never come back. And for 12 years, her family would live with nothing but questions. Her story was about to shift from hope to horror. The morning of her final shift started like any other. She arrived at the station early, uniform crisp, hair tied neatly back. She greeted coworkers with a smile. They joked, traded stories, and grabbed coffee before heading out to their patrol cars. She was in good spirits. A fellow officer remembered her laughing at a silly prank someone pulled in the break room. No one could have guessed this would be the last time they heard her laugh. Before leaving, she went through her routine. She checked the patrol car, lights, siren, radio, and equipment. Everything was in order. She took pride in being careful, making sure every detail was right before hitting the road. Her shift assignment was the usual: patrol the stretch of highway that ran through town. It was a long, lonely road surrounded by trees and swamp. Most nights it was quiet. A few speeding drivers here and there, maybe a drunk driver leaving a bar. Nothing out of the ordinary. She radioed in that she was beginning patrol. Her voice came across calm, steady, and confident, just like always. Driving down the highway, she kept her eyes sharp. Her lights flashed now and then as she pulled over cars. She handled each stop with the same professional tone she was known for. It was all routine, ordinary, nothing unusual. Yet in hindsight, every moment carried a chilling weight. Because as the night went on, something happened out there. Something no one could see. At the station, dispatch logged her location updates, but then the radio grew quiet. Too quiet. Hours passed with no word from her. The patrol car she drove into the night would never return. The night air was thick and humid as she patrolled the highway. Her headlights swept across the dark road, reflecting off the wet pavement. She spotted a car speeding past her cruiser, easily 20 miles over the limit. She flipped on her lights and radioed in. "Unit 42, traffic stop in progress, mile marker 18. Her voice was calm, professional. The car slowed, pulling to the shoulder. She approached carefully, hand near her belt, eyes scanning the driver and the road behind her. The driver rolled down the window. He seemed nervous, fidgeting in his seat. She asked for his license and registration, keeping her tone polite but firm. The radio crackled in the background, other officers on duty checking in, nothing out of the ordinary. She wrote a ticket, then handed it back to the driver. He muttered an apology and she reminded him to drive safely. Then she got back into her patrol car, buckled in and radioed dispatch one last time. Back in service, continuing patrol. That was the last clear communication anyone would receive. A few minutes later, the car that had been pulled over vanished into the shadows behind her. The night swallowed everything. No lights, no sirens, just silence. Dispatch waited for her next check-in. It never came. Her cruiser was on the road, but she was gone. Hours passed and the station began to notice. Her usual updates never arrived. Dispatchers called her radio repeatedly, each attempt met with static. Anxiety grew. Her fellow officers started to worry. She should have checked in by now, one muttered. They called her home. No answer. The quiet in the station became heavy. Something felt wrong, though no one could say exactly what. Her patrol car was still out there somewhere on the dark highway. Lights off, engine running, or maybe abandoned. Every scenario ran through their minds, none comforting. Officers mobilized. Teams fanned out across nearby roads, forests, and swamps. Every mile of her usual route was combed for signs, tire tracks, lights in the distance, anything unusual. But there was nothing. The dispatcher radioed neighbors along the highway, asking if anyone had seen her car. Residents shook their heads. No sign, they said. Inside the station, the mood was tense. Phone lines buzzed with concern from family and friends. Her mother paced the lobby, desperate, asking the same question over and over. Where is she? The chief of police stepped into the room, face pale. Officers exchanged worried glances. The reality was sinking in. She wasn't just late. Something had happened and nobody knew what. The night stretched on with no answers, no clues. Her patrol car was gone and so was she. The small town that had always felt safe suddenly felt exposed. Fear crept in, quiet but heavy. By dawn, the search had expanded. The local news called. Her picture appeared on TV, a smiling young officer now missing. The community held its breath. Was it an accident, a kidnapping, or something far darker? Nobody had a clue. By morning, the town was in chaos. Police officers poured out in every direction, searching for any sign of the missing officer. Patrol cars blocked roads. Teams fanned into the forests and swamps that lined the highway. Every inch of land was combed, every ditch checked, every creek scanned. Helicopters hovered overhead, their bright spotlights cutting through the early fog. Officers called out over bullhorns, their voices echoing in the trees. Dogs barked, noses to the ground, straining for a scent. Boats were sent into nearby rivers. Divers scanned the water. Nothing. Volunteers joined the search. Local residents, friends, neighbors, anyone who could help lined up along the highways, walking slowly, looking for the patrol car or any sign of her. Rumors swirled even as they searched. Some claimed they saw a car speeding through the night. Others said a man had been spotted near the highway. Every lead was followed, every tip checked, but each trail led nowhere. The hours dragged on, tension building with each passing minute. The officers began to realize how unusual this was. No tracks, no witnesses, no signs of a struggle. The patrol car had vanished as if swallowed by the night itself. By noon, helicopters were still circling. Search teams called back in. Frustration etched into their faces. The town's small community watched anxiously from roadsides, praying, hopping, but knowing the longer she stayed missing, the darker the fear became. Every passing hour made the reality heavier. This was not a simple case of a late officer. Something serious, something dangerous had happened, and no one yet knew the truth. The phone rang at the officer's home. Her mother answered, hopeful, expecting a normal call about her daughter's shift. The voice on the other end was serious, low. "Ma'am, we need you to come to the station. It's about your daughter." Her mother froze. The blood drained from her face. Something she had feared all night, all week even, was now real. Her hands trembled, clutching the receiver. "What do you mean? Where is she?" she asked, her voice breaking. The officer on the line hesitated, then carefully said, "We haven't found her, ma'am. We're doing everything we can." Her mother's husband rushed into the room, panic spreading. The family grabbed coats and keys, driving fast to the police station, hearts pounding with fear. Each red light on the road felt like a warning, each second heavier than the last. At the station, officers gathered them in a small room. Their faces were grim, words were few. Her father tried to keep his composure, but the shaking in his hands betrayed him. Her mother's eyes filled with tears, searching every face for answers that weren't coming. The station had never felt so cold. Each tick of the clock amplified the dread. Her mother couldn't stop asking the same question. Where is she? What happened? The officers exchanged glances, uneasy, knowing they had no answers yet. Outside, the search continued. Helicopters buzzing, dogs barking, and sirens echoing across the highway. But inside, the family faced a new reality. The daughter they loved, the brave young officer, was missing. No one knew if she was alive or dead. For the first time, the nightmare became clear. Their daughter had vanished, and no one knew why, how, or if she would ever return. Search teams spread along the lonely stretch of highway where she was last seen. The asphalt was hot from the summer sun, and the smell of damp trees hung in the air. Officers walked slowly, eyes scanning every inch of road and shoulder. Then, near a curve just past the mile marker, someone called out. A faint trail of tire marks appeared in the dirt beside the road. They were old, but unmistakable, a set of tracks that matched the width of her patrol car's tires. Officers followed the trail, stepping carefully to avoid disturbing the marks. The tracks led off the highway toward the edge of a small swamp. The ground was soft, squishy, and difficult to navigate. For a moment, hope sparked. Maybe these marks could tell them what happened. But then, just as quickly as they began, the tracks disappeared. The swamp had swallowed them. There were no further signs, no overturned branches, no footprints, no tire marks beyond that point. It was as if the car had vanished into thin air. Detectives and officers stared, frustrated and confused. How could a car, a full-sized patrol vehicle, disappear so completely? Every tool, every method they had used in the past hours offered nothing more. The highway grew eerily quiet. The usual sounds of birds or passing cars seemed distant. The searchers felt the weight of the unknown pressing down on them. The faint tracks were the only clue, the only link to what had happened, and even that ended in nothing. The officers recorded the location, took photographs, and measured the marks, but the trail was dead. It was a cruel tease, a promise of information that vanished almost as soon as it appeared. For the family, for the department, and for the town, the highway became a symbol of the mystery. Somewhere along that stretch, the young officer had disappeared. The faint tire marks were the last tangible evidence anyone would find, a hint of her path, and a reminder of how little they knew about the night she vanished. No one could explain it. No one could say what had taken her. The search continued, but with every passing hour the truth felt more distant, buried somewhere beyond reach, hidden in shadows that no one could yet see. The moment she was declared missing, the police knew this was bigger than a local case. Teams were sent out across the county, then the state. Patrol cars lined highways, and officers drove through small towns, checking every road she might have taken. In the forests, search parties moved carefully, looking for footprints, tire tracks, anything that could point to her. Dogs with strong noses followed faint scents, leading handlers into swampy areas where humans could barely walk. Helicopters hovered above, shining spotlights over trees and fields, trying to spot anything from the air. Near rivers and lakes, divers waded in, scanning the muddy bottoms. Every bend in the river was checked, every shore scoured for signs of her car or her body. Volunteers from nearby towns joined the search. Families, neighbors, and friends walked the same roads she might have taken. Some prayed. Others scanned every shadow, hopping for a clue. Hours turned into days. Tips poured into the station. Some seemed credible, some were dead ends. Each lead was chased, every possibility explored. Yet for all the effort, nothing came back. No patrol car, no trace of her. The young officer had vanished completely. The community held its breath. Everyone wondered what could have happened. Fear grew, spreading along the roads she used to patrol. If this could happen to one of their own, anyone could be at risk. By the third day, the search became frantic. Helicopters flew longer hours. Officers combed areas they had already searched, unwilling to give up. Every rock turned, every bush moved was a chance to find her. Still, the young officer remained missing. With no leads and no sign of her, the police faced the most terrifying reality. Someone had taken her, or something terrible had happened on that lonely Florida highway, and they had no clue who, what, or why. As news of her disappearance spread, whispers and rumors began to grow. People reported seeing things that didn't make sense. A man standing near the highway, acting nervous. A car with no license plates driving slowly, as if watching. Details were unclear, but everyone felt urgency. Investigators followed up on every tip. Officers went door to door, questioning anyone who might have seen her that night. Drivers remembered flashes of headlights. Locals remembered hearing engines that didn't belong, but every lead seemed to evaporate the moment they tried to pin it down. The rumor of the strange man was repeated by multiple witnesses, but descriptions conflicted. One said he was tall, another short. One claimed he wore dark clothes, another a hat. Police tried to cross-check, but no match was found. The suspicious car also left no trace. Tire tracks, gone, plate numbers, none recorded. It was like it had appeared and disappeared with her. Every tip brought hope, but it vanished just as fast. The community began to murmur about theories. Had someone planned this? Was it a random crime or something more sinister? Families worried about their own children, and drivers stayed alert on the highway. Fear settled in like a shadow over the town. Meanwhile, her family appeared on local news, begging anyone with information to come forward. They shared her smiling photo, her badge number, and the memory of a daughter, sister, and officer who was loved by many. Still, leads went nowhere. Police were running out of options. Rumors swirled, but no one could tell which were true. Every detail felt urgent, but nothing could explain why a young officer in uniform had disappeared without a trace on that lonely road. Late that night, a resident driving along the highway noticed something unusual. In the distance, patrol lights flickered, red and blue flashes cutting through the dark. The witness slowed down, curious, thinking a routine traffic stop was happening. The witness remembered seeing her clearly. She was in her patrol car, lights rotating, the engine running. She appeared calm, professional, just as she always had been. But then, in a moment that haunted the witness forever, the lights suddenly went dark. No siren, no radio call, nothing. Just silence where a flashing patrol car had been seconds before. The witness slowed even more, trying to see what had happened, but the highway was empty. No car, no officer. Police later recorded the witness statement. They tried to trace the lights, retrace the path of the patrol car, but it was gone. This single glimpse became the last known moment anyone had of the young officer alive. The witness couldn't shake it. The lights had been a warning, a signal, a moment that told everyone something was wrong, but no one knew what. It was the moment before the unknown swallowed her whole. Investigators treated this tip seriously. They sent officers back along the stretch of road, looking for any sign that something had occurred. But the scene offered nothing new, no tire marks, no scraps of evidence, just darkness and quiet. That single observation became critical in the investigation. It confirmed the officer had been on the highway that night. It confirmed she had been visible, active, and alert, and then she vanished without explanation. The town could only imagine what had happened in those fleeting moments. The patrol lights that had flashed once and then gone dark became a symbol, the last sign of a young officer who had disappeared and would not return. By the next morning, the story had reached every home in the county. News crews filmed the empty highway. Helicopters hovered above, searching. Local reporters spoke to neighbors, painting a picture of fear and uncertainty. Her parents appeared on television that day, sitting side by side in their living room. Her mother clutched a photograph of her daughter in uniform, smiling and proud. Her father held her mother's hand, his knuckles white with tension. "Please," her mother said, voice trembling, "if anyone knows anything, come forward. My daughter would never just leave." Her words cracked, carried through living rooms across the county. through radios, TVs, and newspapers. Her father added, "We need answers. We need her back. Please help us find her." His voice was steady but heavy with fear. The family pleaded with the community, describing the young officer's habits, her last known locations, and her dedication to the job. They spoke of her warmth, her courage, her commitment to the badge. They reminded everyone that she had a life, a family, and friends who loved her. Officers hoped the public appeal would generate leads, and it did. Calls flooded in, each tip checked and investigated. Some were credible, others were false alarms. But the family clung to hope, to the possibility that someone somewhere had seen something. Neighbors rallied. People taped flyers to telephone poles, and community members organized volunteer searches. The young officer's disappearance had become a shared worry, a fear that gripped everyone who knew her. Even as the news cameras left, the image of her parents pleading for their daughter stayed in the minds of the town. Her mother's words repeated over and over. She would never just leave. It became clear to everyone watching. The family refused to give up. The community felt the weight of uncertainty, but also the determination of a mother and father who loved their child more than anything. Their televised plea would echo through the investigation, a reminder to officers, witnesses, and the public that a young life was missing, and the search could not stop until answers were found. Days passed and the early rush of leads began to dry up. The strange man on the highway, gone. The car with no plates, never found. Every tip that had brought hope now ended in nothing. Detectives checked records, traced phone calls, and followed up on witness statements. Each thread promised answers, but every trail ran cold. Tire tracks faded, sightings contradicted each other, and phones went unanswered. The more they searched, the more empty the clues became. Officers grew frustrated. They worked long hours retracing her route, revisiting each witness, scanning the swamps and forests again. Every time they returned with the same result: nothing. The patrol car remained missing. No signs of a struggle, no evidence of a crash, no trace of her anywhere along the roads she knew so well. Her family watched, desperate, as each lead fizzled. The media began to report the lack of progress. The community, once hopeful, started to fear the worst. People whispered that maybe she was gone for good. Even the officers who had worked alongside her felt the growing weight of failure. The young woman they had admired and respected seemed to have disappeared into thin air. Hope that she would be found alive began to fade. Each day without news made the truth harder to face. The investigation that had started with urgency now seemed stuck in shadows, and the town slowly realized that answers might not come quickly, if at all. Every lead collapsed under the pressure of time. Each dead end built on the last. The mystery deepened, and the sense of fear and helplessness grew stronger. As the search continued without results, whispers began to spread in town. Some people suggested that the department itself might be hiding something. "They know more than they're telling," one neighbor said quietly. "She could have found out something, maybe something dangerous." Rumors circulated about payoffs, corruption, or secret dealings that the young officer might have discovered. People wondered if someone on the force had silenced her before she could speak. Officers in the department noticed the murmurs too. Some dismissed them as panic and speculation. Others couldn't ignore the possibility that not all of the truth had been shared. Fear grew quietly among the ranks, fear that someone they trusted could be involved. The community's trust began to erode. Parents worried about letting their teenagers drive on the same roads she patrolled. Drivers hesitated to travel alone after dark. A quiet tension settled over the town like a shadow. Her family, unaware of the rumors at first, began to hear whispers. Friends and neighbors approached them cautiously, mentioning their own suspicions. Her mother refused to believe it. "She would never run from us," she insisted. "She wouldn't leave her badge." Yet the thought that someone within the department might be involved lingered. It added a layer of fear to the investigation. What if the people tasked with finding her were the ones hiding the truth? Detectives pushed through the gossip, focusing on facts. But even as they worked, the whispers didn't stop. They reminded everyone that the case was no longer just about a missing officer. It was about trust, secrecy, and the possibility that danger came from within. Every unanswered question, every dead end, and every rumor made the town realize how little they knew. The mystery of her disappearance was growing darker, and with each passing day, the fear that she might never be found alive became more real. Even as weeks turned into months, her mother refused to give up. Every Sunday, she drove to the stretch of highway where her daughter had vanished. She brought fresh flowers, placing them carefully on the shoulder of the road, near the spot no one could forget. Locals began to notice. Drivers slowed as they passed, some pulling over to watch silently. The small pile of flowers grew over time, candles, photographs, and little notes left by strangers who felt her absence too. Her mother knelt on the asphalt, arranging the blooms, whispering her daughter's name, hopping somehow she could hear. She refused to leave until she had finished her ritual, no matter how hot the sun or how heavy the rain. The site became more than just a memorial. It became a shrine of grief. People stopped to pause, to reflect on the young officer who had disappeared without a trace. They wondered what had happened, who was responsible, and why no one could find her. Even as the investigation stalled, the flowers remained. They were a symbol of hope, of persistence, and of love that would not fade. Each petal represented a memory, each candle a prayer. The highway, once ordinary, was now a place where a community felt the weight of loss. And as her mother left each week, she carried with her both sorrow and determination, refusing to let the memory of her daughter disappear into the darkness that had swallowed her so many months ago. At first, the missing officer's story dominated the news. Cameras filmed the highway, reporters interviewed neighbors, and headlines screamed about the mystery of her disappearance. People across the state followed every update, hopping for answers. But weeks passed, then months. The news cycle moved on. Other stories, bigger crimes, accidents, political events, took the spotlight. Her face, once on every TV and newspaper, slowly disappeared from public view. The police continued the search quietly, but without fresh leads, updates were sparse. Press conferences grew shorter, statements more cautious. The community still worried, but without coverage, the urgency faded. The sense of hope began to slip away. Her family watched, heartbroken. They had expected answers, updates, any clue that could guide them. Instead, the silence grew heavier with each passing day. They read stories of other crimes and other missing people, and each time they were reminded that their daughter's story was slipping into obscurity. Detectives reviewed old leads, re-interviewed witnesses, and checked every record, but nothing new emerged. The case became stagnant. Her patrol car was still missing. The mysterious sightings and tips had long since led nowhere. The young officer had vanished without a trace, and the world moved on. Inside the department, her photograph remained pinned to the bulletin board, but few people mentioned her anymore. The public's attention had shifted, and the urgency of her disappearance became a quiet whisper instead of a headline. For her family, the silence was deafening. They knew she had not left on her own, but without answers, the world acted as if she no longer existed. Her story had faded from the headlines, but not from their hearts. Holidays became the hardest days. Her family set a place at the table for her every year, even though no one knew if she would ever return. Plates and cups waited, untouched, as the rest of the family tried to carry on with the celebrations. Birthdays were worse. Candles were lit in her memory. No one blew them out for her, no gifts were opened on her behalf. The absence was sharp, a constant reminder of the girl who had vanished so long ago. Her mother could not escape the grief. Each birthday or holiday became a cycle of hope and heartbreak. She would call her daughter's name quietly at the dinner table, imagining the sound of her voice responding. Tears often fell unnoticed. Friends and relatives tried to comfort the family, but there were no answers to offer. Conversations drifted awkwardly, avoiding the missing officer's absence, but her family could not forget. They lived with the empty chair, the untouched plate, the silent phone. Even inside the department, her colleagues remembered. Small gestures kept her memory alive, a badge left on a desk, a note pinned to the bulletin board. But these gestures were private. The world outside moved on, while her family suffered in quiet despair. Years passed. Birthdays and holidays blurred together. The young officer's absence became a part of daily life. The routine grief, the empty chairs, the silent phones, the unanswered questions became a constant companion. Yet her mother never stopped visiting the highway where she vanished. The flowers remained. The small rituals continued. Despite the silence, despite the lack of progress, she refused to give up. She clung to hope, holding on to the memory of her daughter and the belief that someday there might be answers. As the years went by, the town's conversation slowly changed. At first, people asked questions, offered tips, and searched for clues. But as time passed without answers, whispers began to fill the silence. Some neighbors suggested the officer might have run away. Maybe she was tired of the job, one would say quietly. Maybe she just left, another whispered. Their voices carried uncertainty and doubt, as if trying to make sense of the impossible. Others spoke in darker tones. They suggested something terrible had happened, that she had been taken, or worse. They hinted at secrets, hidden dangers, or people who might have wanted to silence her. These ideas spread quietly, never confirmed, but enough to make people glance nervously when her name came up. The highway where she vanished became a place of unease. Drivers slowed, eyes scanning for shadows. Children were warned not to wander near the road at night. Even those who had never met her felt the tension that lingered, the unanswered questions that hovered over the town. The missing officer became more than a person. She became a story, a warning, a symbol of fear and mystery. Every whisper carried a mix of grief and suspicion. And still the truth remained buried. The rumors gave the town something to talk about, but nothing to solve. They were fragments, hints, shadows of a reality no one could confirm. Through it all, her mother refused to believe the whispers. Friends and neighbors tried to offer comfort or explanations, but she would not listen. She would never leave her badge, she said firmly, voice unwavering, eyes full of determination. Her mother believed in the daughter she knew, brave, loyal, and dedicated to her job. She could not accept that her child would simply disappear by choice. In her heart, she knew something terrible had happened to her daughter. Each week she visited the highway where she vanished. Flowers were placed carefully, notes written, candles lit. Her rituals were small but steadfast acts of faith, reminders that she had not given up hope. Family and friends watched, often in silence, knowing that her belief was unshakable. Even as the town whispered theories, even as the media moved on, her mother clung to the truth she felt in her heart, that her daughter had been taken, not lost by choice. Her belief inspired others in the family to hold on as well. Her father, siblings, and close relatives continued to hope, despite years of uncertainty. They understood that giving up was not an option, not while her mother refused to let the story end in silence. Her unwavering faith became a quiet force in the investigation. Detectives noted it, journalists mentioned it, and neighbors respected it. Even in the absence of answers, her mother's certainty kept the search alive in memory, in hope, and in determination to someday discover the truth. Every whispered rumor, every theory the town shared could not shake her. She carried the memory of her daughter, the love for the officer she knew, and the hope that someday the mystery would end and justice would be found. Inside the police department, the young officer's disappearance remained a heavy weight. Though time had passed, her absence was still felt in every conversation, every meeting, every patrol briefing. Quiet debates began among the officers. Some believed she had been ambushed by strangers, criminals she might have crossed, or someone who saw an opportunity. They argued that it could have been random, violent, and tragic, but not personal. Others whispered differently. They questioned whether someone she trusted might have betrayed her. Maybe a colleague had lied or hidden evidence. Maybe someone within the department had a motive, a secret to protect. The idea was uncomfortable, but the silence around the case made it impossible to ignore. Investigators reviewed old notes, statements, and patrol schedules. Nothing concrete emerged, but doubts grew. Officers wondered if someone with access, someone who knew the routines, the roads, the areas she patrolled, could have taken advantage. Discussions were careful, hushed. People feared accusations could ruin careers or, worse, point to dangerous truths. but the tension inside the department was real. Every officer who had worked with her recalled her professionalism, her honesty, and her loyalty. The thought that one of them could be connected to her disappearance was chilling. Theories continued to circulate quietly, mixing with memories, speculation, and fear. Each idea carried weight, but none solved the case. No one had answers, only questions. The young officer had vanished, and the mystery now included not only the town but the people sworn to protect it. Betrayal or misfortune? The department itself seemed caught in the shadow of doubt, unsure who could be trusted, and unable to close the case. Outside the department, the town whispered of other possibilities. People speculated about drug traffickers moving through Florida, about shady figures with money and influence, and about secrets some powerful individuals would do anything to protect. Each story added layers to the mystery. Was she taken because she discovered something dangerous? Did she witness a crime she wasn't supposed to see? Or had someone with power decided to silence her before she could speak? Locals told one another what they had heard: strange visits late at night, men lurking near the highway, cars with dark windows. Some stories were vague, others specific, but all hinted at a force beyond ordinary crime. The rumors fed fear. The town felt smaller, more vulnerable. Everyone wondered if the young officer had stumbled into something bigger than herself, something no one could challenge. Parents warned their children to be careful. Drivers doubled their caution. The shadow of her disappearance spread far beyond the highway where she had vanished. Investigators noted the rumors but treated them cautiously. Few could be confirmed. Yet the stories persisted, growing in detail and intensity. They were impossible to ignore because the young officer's disappearance had already defied explanation. Each rumor made the case more complex, more dangerous. Every tip suggested a world of power, corruption, and crime that stretched beyond the town, and each suggestion only deepened the mystery. How could a single young officer vanish, leaving behind no trace, in a place where people claimed to know so much? The combination of power, secrecy, and fear kept the town on edge. And the longer the case remained unsolved, the more the young officer's story became legend. A warning of what could happen when courage meets danger in a world where trust is fragile and secrets are deadly. For 12 long years, her photograph remained pinned to the wall of the precinct. It was a simple photo, her in uniform, smiling, badge shining, eyes full of determination. Officers walked past it every day, some barely noticing it, others pausing for a moment, remembering. The image became a silent presence in the building. New recruits saw it and asked questions. Veterans remembered the day she vanished. Every glance carried a mixture of respect, sorrow, and unresolved mystery. The young officer's absence was felt in every corner of the station. Radios clicked with reports she would never respond to. Her patrol car never returned to the garage. Empty desks and lockers reminded everyone of the gap she left behind. The photo became a ghost on the wall. It was a quiet witness to time passing, investigations stalling, and years of unanswered questions. Officers spoke about her in whispers, recalling her professionalism, her courage, and her warmth. No one could forget. Occasionally, detectives or officers would glance at the photo before heading out on their own patrols. It was a reminder that a colleague, a friend, and a young life had been lost in the line of duty. The questions surrounding her disappearance lingered like shadows, impossible to ignore. Even as new cases came in, as arrests were made and solved, her photograph remained. It refused to fade. It represented not just the loss of one officer, but the uncertainty, the fear, and the grief that had settled over the town and the department. For 12 years, her image reminded everyone that some mysteries do not end quickly, that courage can be met with danger, and that even as time moves on, the memory of those who vanish can remain vivid, haunting, and impossible to forget. No one spoke her name casually. The photo demanded attention, respect, and reflection. A ghost on the wall, watching silently as life continued around her. A young officer who had disappeared and left the world with a question no one could answer. In 1994, over a decade after the young officer vanished, a construction crew was clearing land along a quiet stretch of road. The area was remote, filled with overgrown grass and patches of swamp. It was a routine job moving dirt, leveling the ground, nothing unusual. The backhoe operator guided the large machine carefully. The teeth of the bucket dug into the earth, lifting clumps of dirt and roots. The crew chatted as they worked, joking quietly, unaware that something was about to change their day and the town's history. Then with a sudden metallic clang, the backhoe struck something solid. The noise echoed across the empty land. The operator froze, heart racing. He checked the bucket, then dug again, cautiously. Another clang confirmed it wasn't a rock or a tree root. The crew gathered around, curiosity mixed with unease. One worker brushed dirt aside and glimpsed metal beneath. "What is that?" someone asked. There was a tense silence. No one expected what lay beneath the soil. The foreman called the local police immediately. They arrived quickly, sirens quiet but urgent, knowing the area was remote. Officers guided the workers to stay back as forensic experts were summoned. No one knew the scale of the discovery yet, but there was a growing sense that this was far more than a routine construction job. Excavation slowed. Every scoop of dirt was handled with care. The machinery lifted and dropped slowly, revealing hints of a hidden object. Questions raced through everyone's minds. Could it be old debris, scrap metal, or something much more serious connected to the disappearance that had haunted the town for 12 years? The quiet road, once ordinary, now held a dark possibility. The crew, police, and witnesses could feel the weight of history beneath the soil, and none of them were prepared for what would come next. As the dirt was carefully cleared, a shape began to emerge. At first, the crew thought it was just scrap metal, perhaps left from years of old construction, but the outline was too regular, too solid. Dirt slid off, revealing a curved surface, a roof. A car roof. The workers stepped back, fear and shock written across their faces. They realized this was no ordinary object. They had found a vehicle buried in the ground. Police officers cordoned off the area immediately. Reporters began arriving, cameras rolling, as word spread that something significant had been uncovered. The quiet stretch of road, untouched for years, now drew attention from across the county. The top of the car showed its color, faded and rusted, but the shape and size were unmistakable. Inside, detectives knew, could be the answers to a case that had gone cold more than a decade ago. The realization hit slowly. This could be the missing officer's patrol car. Forensic teams arrived with care, donning gloves and preparing equipment to safely remove the car. Each layer of dirt lifted revealed more details. The windows, the tires, the faint outline of the license plate. It was a frozen moment in time, preserved under earth and secrecy for 12 years. The crew and officers exchanged uneasy glances. Who had buried it here? How had no one seen this car for all these years? And most importantly, what or who would be found inside? As they continued digging, the tension in the air grew thick. Everyone understood the implications. This was no longer speculation. The vanished officer's story was about to move from rumor and grief into reality. Every shovel, every scoop, every movement of dirt brought them closer to the truth, a truth the town had been waiting 12 years to see. The road that had swallowed her now gave up its secret, one layer at a time. When the deputies arrived, they immediately sensed something was wrong. This wasn't just a piece of scrap metal or an old abandoned vehicle. The shape, the placement, and the way it had been buried made it clear this was a patrol car, one of their own. Officers cordoned off the area and moved cautiously. They examined the soil, the surrounding land, and the partially exposed roof. Questions raced through their minds. Who had done this? How had a patrol car vanished without notice for 12 years? And most importantly, what or who was inside? Detectives took over, ordering the crew to stop work until forensic teams could arrive. Cameras and notepads recorded the scene. Every detail was critical, every angle documented. They knew this could finally answer the questions that had haunted the department and the town for over a decade. As the officers worked, neighbors and reporters gathered at a safe distance. The realization spread quickly. The missing officer, the young patrolwoman who had vanished in 1982, might finally be found. Hearts raced, but fear and uncertainty dominated the mood. No one knew what they would discover once the car was fully uncovered. The deputies and detectives carefully lifted layers of dirt, removing debris and exposing more of the vehicle. The identification numbers, the shape of the lights, and the details of the patrol car confirmed their worst and most important suspicions. This was her car. It had been buried here, hidden from view, untouched for 12 years. A quiet tension filled the air. The small crew of law enforcement officers, construction workers, and reporters all understood the significance. This discovery was no accident. The buried patrol car meant the missing officer's story was about to be revealed, and the answers might be darker than anyone had imagined. Forensic teams arrived with specialized equipment, moving carefully around the car. Every scoop of dirt was handled slowly to avoid disturbing what lay beneath. The anticipation was unbearable. As the roof was fully exposed, teams opened the doors. Inside, they saw what no one had expected: human remains, still dressed in the officer's uniform. Her badge, radio, and even her weapon were intact, preserved by the dirt and time. The missing patrolwoman, gone for 12 years, had finally been found. Officers stood silently, some unable to speak. They had worked the case for years, haunted by the memory of her disappearance. Seeing her here in the car she had driven that night was both shocking and devastating. The skeletal remains confirmed the worst. She had not run away. She had not survived. For over a decade she had been hidden from the world, and now the truth could finally be examined. Detectives carefully documented the scene, photographing each detail and collecting evidence for forensic analysis. Her family was notified immediately. The news hit them like a storm. After 12 years of fear, uncertainty, and hope, they were finally given answers, though the truth was heartbreaking. Their daughter, the brave young officer, had been killed the night she vanished, and the secrets that had kept her hidden were about to come to light. Investigators began to examine the car and its surroundings. Tire marks, dirt patterns, and the way the vehicle had been buried offered the first real clues. Every piece of evidence mattered. Each detail was a potential key to understanding who was responsible and how such a crime had been hidden for so long. The town braced itself. After 12 years of silence, the missing officer was finally found. Her story, frozen in time beneath the dirt, would no longer be a mystery. But what the forensic evidence would reveal next was something nobody could have expected. Word of the discovery spread quickly. News crews arrived from across the state, cameras rolling, microphones ready. Reporters shouted questions, trying to capture reactions from officers and construction workers alike. Locals gathered along the edge of the cordoned-off area, whispering nervously. Faces were pale, eyes wide. Many had known the young officer or remembered the news from 12 years ago. Seeing her patrol car unearthed was shocking, impossible to ignore. Some residents stopped their cars to watch, while others stood silently, absorbing the gravity of the moment. Conversations were low, tense, filled with uncertainty. Could it really be her? People asked each other. 12 years gone, and now this. Officers maintained control of the scene, keeping the crowd at a safe distance. But the buzz of cameras, microphones, and murmuring witnesses made the atmosphere electric. Everyone understood this was more than a news story. It was a revelation of a long-held secret, a closure long denied, and a shock to a town that had lived with fear for over a decade. Journalists filmed the partially exposed car, the mound of dirt, and the surrounding swampland. Helicopters hovered above, capturing aerial shots for live broadcasts. The dig site became a stage, a place where the missing officer's story could finally be told to the world. While reporters chased interviews and images, the investigators remained focused on the task at hand. The news coverage could wait, uncovering the truth inside the car could not. The town watched, stunned and silent, as the past finally resurfaced. For 12 years, hope and fear had mingled. Now they were about to witness answers, though the reality was far more tragic than anyone could have imagined. Investigators carefully removed each item from the car, documenting everything meticulously. Her badge, still attached to her uniform, was lifted with gloves. Her radio, weapon, and other personal items were collected piece by piece, preserved as if frozen in time. Every detail mattered. The position of the badge, the scratches on the radio, and the placement of her weapon could provide clues about the final moments of her life. Forensic teams photographed everything, cataloged every object, and ensured nothing was disturbed. It was as if the young officer had stepped out for a moment and never returned. The items told a story frozen in the dirt for 12 years, silent evidence of the life that had been violently cut short. Officers and investigators exchanged glances, the weight of realization heavy in the air. This was no accident, no random disappearance. The care with which the car had been buried suggested planning, intent, and a desire to hide the truth. Her personal items, letters, small keepsakes, and uniform details were removed carefully, wrapped, and sent for further analysis. Every piece became part of the puzzle that would finally help solve a mystery that had haunted the department and the community for over a decade. The scene was both tragic and revealing. 12 years of unanswered questions were beginning to be answered, one piece of evidence at a time. Each item told the investigators more about what had happened, who might have been involved, and how such a crime had been hidden for so long. For the first time in over a decade, the missing officer's story had moved from rumor and speculation to tangible evidence. The discovery of her car and the preserved items inside set the stage for a forensic investigation that would uncover shocking truths about her final night and the secrets that had been buried with her. The moment the car was fully uncovered, questions erupted. Investigators, officers, and even the reporters couldn't stop asking, who could have buried a police car? How had no one noticed for 12 long years? The discovery shocked the town. People whispered as they watched, their minds racing with possibilities. Was it an accident, a cover-up, or something far darker? The very idea that a patrol vehicle could vanish without a trace for more than a decade was almost impossible to believe. Detectives examined the site over and over looking for clues. Tire tracks, disturbed dirt, and the surrounding landscape hinted at heavy machinery being used to cover the car. Someone had planned this carefully. It was not a random act, it was deliberate. Officers recalled the night she disappeared. The calls, the patrols, the empty radio, they all made more sense now. But knowing the car's location after 12 years didn't answer the deeper questions. Who wanted her gone? And why had they gone to such lengths to hide it? The press broadcast images of the scene across television screens. The town's residents were stunned, shaken, and fearful. Conversations at grocery stores, gas stations, and schools centered on one thought: if someone could do this to a police officer, who else was at risk? Even within the department, unease spread. The discovery suggested secrets someone had worked to hide for over a decade. Officers feared that those responsible might still be out there. The questions now demanded answers, and nobody had them yet. For the family, the revelation was bittersweet. They finally had proof of what happened, but it brought no comfort, only heartbreak. The young officer was gone, her life stolen, and the truth of her final moments remained a puzzle. The buried patrol car had been silent for 12 years, hiding the story of a crime nobody expected. Now that the secret was out, the town, the department, and the family all faced a chilling reality. The answers might be darker than anyone imagined, and the questions would only grow louder as the investigation deepened. The moment the buried patrol car was fully uncovered, the department acted quickly. The old case file, long cold and full of unanswered questions, was pulled from dusty shelves. Officers, detectives, and forensic experts assembled immediately. A new task force was formed, dedicated solely to solving the mystery of the missing officer. Every report, every tip, and every note from 12 years ago was reviewed. Nothing would be overlooked. The investigators understood the significance. This was their chance to finally answer questions that had haunted the town and the department for more than a decade. Meetings were held daily. Teams divided responsibilities. One group focused on forensic evidence from the car, another reviewed witness statements from 1982, and a third looked into anyone who might have had a motive. The atmosphere was tense, urgent and focused. Detectives retraced her last known movements, studied the old patrol routes, and examined her files. They wanted to reconstruct the night she vanished. They knew time had passed, but technology and fresh eyes could uncover what had been missed. Family members were kept updated carefully. They waited with anxious hope, knowing the discovery of the car was only the beginning. The investigation was now active, intense, and relentless. No detail would be ignored. The department felt a renewed sense of purpose. Officers who had long feared the case would remain unsolved now worked with urgency. The buried patrol car was more than evidence. It was a key to understanding what had happened to a colleague, a friend, and a young officer whose life had been stolen. The reopening of the case set off a chain reaction. Leads would be revisited, witnesses re-interviewed, and evidence analyzed in ways impossible 12 years ago. Every step brought them closer to answers. The town, long silent about the mystery, waited anxiously. Investigators moved with focus and determination, knowing that this time justice might finally be possible. Forensic experts began examining the patrol car and its contents carefully. Every bone, every item of uniform, and every piece of equipment was studied to reconstruct what had happened that night. The results were clear and shocking. The young officer had died the night she disappeared. The condition of her bones, the way her uniform had been preserved, and the placement of her equipment showed that this was no accident. She had not run off. She had not been lost. She had been killed. Investigators noted small but telling details. The position of her arms, the items still clutched in her hands, the intact radio and badge. These were frozen moments from the night she vanished, preserved by the dirt that had covered the car. Every piece of evidence told the same story. She had met her end that night. Forensic analysis also indicated there was no struggle inside the car. It suggested she may have been incapacitated or forced into the vehicle before it was buried. The thoroughness of the burial indicated planning, control, and intent. Someone wanted her hidden, and they succeeded for 12 years. The task force began to piece together timelines and sequences. Every second of that night mattered. The car, the uniform, and the skeleton were not just evidence of death. They were evidence of a deliberate act, carefully executed to avoid discovery. The forensic truth shocked even the most seasoned investigators. The realization that the young officer had been killed so deliberately deepened the urgency. This was no random crime. It was targeted, precise, and calculated. Every detail from the forensic report became a roadmap for the next steps. Who could have done this, why, and how? The investigation now had concrete evidence to follow. No longer a missing person case, it was a homicide investigation, one that demanded answers, justice, and accountability. Forensic investigators moved carefully around the site, examining every inch of soil surrounding the buried patrol car. Their attention focused on a series of faint impressions in the dirt, tire marks. The marks were unusual. They suggested heavy weight, pressure, and deliberate movement. Experts confirmed what the team had suspected. The patrol car had not ended up in that pit by accident. It had been pushed, guided, and then buried. The evidence was clear. Someone had used heavy machinery to conceal the vehicle. Detectives photographed the impressions, traced the patterns, and took detailed measurements. Each mark told a story. The depth, angle, and spacing indicated more than one trip of equipment over the site. It wasn't a quick cover-up. It was planned, precise, and executed with knowledge of both the land and the machinery required. The methodical burial raised immediate questions. Who had access to such machines? Who could move a patrol car without attracting attention? And how had they managed to hide it for 12 years? Officers studied the soil and tire tracks, comparing them with old records. They noted that the area was remote, far from public view, and near properties where construction or heavy equipment might have been available. The pattern suggested someone with resources, knowledge, and audacity. The scene grew tense as detectives realized the scope of what they were dealing with. This was no crime of opportunity. It was a premeditated act, carried out with care and secrecy. Whoever did this understood how to avoid detection, and they succeeded for over a decade. The tire marks became a crucial clue. They narrowed the investigation, pointing to people familiar with heavy machinery and the area surrounding the highway. Investigators knew that following this trail could lead them to the person or people responsible for killing a young officer and hiding the evidence for 12 years. Every scoop of dirt, every measurement of tire impressions, and every photograph was a step closer to understanding how a patrol car and the officer inside could vanish without a trace for more than a decade. The forensic hunt was no longer just about recovery. It was about solving a carefully hidden murder. Detectives combed through county records, construction permits, and farm equipment logs. They listed every person and company that had access to heavy machinery in the area that night. Names of construction firms, farmers, and county workers filled pages. Each lead was checked and cross-referenced with the missing officer's case. Officers wondered who could have moved a patrol car and buried it without anyone noticing. The task force focused on alibis, checking who was in town and who might have been nearby. Every detail mattered. Whoever had the right equipment, knowledge, and access was now the center of the investigation. Investigators went back to townsfolk who remembered the night she vanished. Some recalled strange headlights cutting through the dark, distant noises, or men moving equipment late at night. Others remembered unfamiliar cars parked along the highway or people acting suspiciously near construction sites. Each new testimony, though vague, gave detectives a timeline and narrowed suspects. Officers compared these memories with forensic evidence from the car. They searched for patterns. Every small clue mattered because it could connect machinery, timing, and people to the hidden patrol car. Questions multiplied, and the web of suspicion began to tighten around those who had access. Attention turned to local criminals she had arrested weeks before. These men were known for drug trafficking and intimidation. Detectives wondered if revenge could explain the burial. Did they ambush her? The timing fit, and some had the means to act violently. Investigators checked their alibis, financial records, and known associates. Rumors of threats from that period surfaced. Interviews revealed tension between the officer and certain suspects. Could one of these men have lured her, killed her, and arranged the burial? Every lead was weighed, every story tested against evidence. The task force knew they were closing in on possible perpetrators. One fellow officer assigned to her beat that night raised suspicion. His statements from 1982 didn't match witness accounts. Some details changed over repeated interviews. Detectives noted inconsistencies, arrival times, route descriptions, and interactions with other officers. Why would a trusted colleague give shifting stories? Was it confusion, fear, or intentional deception? Investigators scrutinized his files, colleagues, recollections, and phone records. This officer became a critical person of interest. His proximity to the missing patrolwoman and knowledge of department routines suggested he could have been involved or at least aware of what happened that night. The investigation now focused on two possibilities. 1. A revenge killing by the criminals she had arrested. 2. An inside job involving someone from the department. Both theories fit parts of the evidence, but only one could explain the burial, tire marks, and secrecy for 12 years. Investigators compared motives, access, and opportunity. Every clue pointed toward careful planning. The puzzle tightened as detectives realized that answers would come from examining both sides, criminal threats and internal betrayal. Soon, the full truth would emerge, revealing exactly how a young officer vanished and why her patrol car remained hidden for over a decade. Detectives began noticing something unsettling. The evidence against local criminals didn't fully explain the burial of the patrol car. Tire marks, heavy machinery access, and planning all suggested knowledge of the area and police procedures. Too many details pointed back toward the department itself. Investigators realized they had to consider someone inside the force. The same people she trusted, the same ones who had worked with her that night, suddenly became potential suspects. The focus shifted from outside threats to internal betrayal. Every clue would now be analyzed with suspicion toward those who should have been protectors, not perpetrators. Paper trails began to reveal the shocking truth. Investigators found evidence of cash exchanging hands between several deputies and known drug traffickers moving shipments through Florida. Payments were hidden in logs, unreported transactions, and under-the-table dealings. Corruption ran deeper than anyone had guessed. The missing officer had stumbled onto something dangerous, a network of bribes and protection deals that allowed illegal shipments to move freely. Detectives mapped the connections, each deputy linked to a trafficker, each payment linked to a cover-up. The scope of the corruption shocked even veteran officers. Someone had used their badge to protect criminals, and anyone who got too close was in danger. The young patrolwoman had noticed the pattern, quietly gathering proof, unaware that simply knowing the truth could cost her life. The investigation now had a clear line of sight. The corruption inside the department, the money, the payoffs, and the people desperate to keep it secret. Every record, every financial document, and every witness now pointed toward a chilling reality. The missing officer hadn't vanished randomly. She had uncovered something so dangerous that someone inside her own department decided to silence her forever. The investigation revealed exactly what she had found. The young officer had quietly collected evidence of the bribes and illegal shipments. Her notes, hidden files, and careful observations showed she planned to report everything to her superiors. That night, she intended to bring the truth into the light, but she never got the chance. Someone who knew her, someone she trusted, waited in the shadows. Her discovery made her a target, and her courage to do the right thing would cost her life. The truth she uncovered was dangerous enough to change everything for her, for the department, and for the town. Investigators uncovered a devastating truth. A fellow officer, someone she trusted completely, had lured her out that night. He pretended it was routine patrol work, nothing unusual. Every detail of that evening, once thought routine, was part of a setup. Detectives examined his statements, his location, and interactions. The betrayal was personal. The officer she relied on, the one who should have protected her, had instead guided her into danger. This revelation shocked the team. It wasn't strangers on the road. It was one of her own, a colleague sworn to uphold the law, who turned predator that night. Records revealed the machinery used to bury the patrol car belonged to a friend of a corrupt deputy. Heavy equipment that could move a car and cover it with dirt was available, and someone had planned it carefully. The burial happened the same night she vanished. Tire marks matched equipment access logs. Every trace indicated preparation and inside knowledge. It wasn't a random act. It was a calculated move to hide a crime. The patrol car, with the officer inside, was concealed deliberately, in a location chosen to remain undisturbed for years. The crime was cold, precise, and planned. For over a decade, silence protected the killers. Officers who suspected the truth stayed quiet, fearing retaliation, career damage, or worse. The conspiracy worked. No one spoke. Rumors circulated quietly, but nothing was proven. Those involved ensured the patrol car remained hidden, and the story stayed buried with it. Fear and loyalty to colleagues kept others from investigating further. The town waited unknowingly, while the truth slept beneath dirt and deception. For 12 years, justice was delayed, and the young officer's bravery went unrecognized. The secret remained, waiting to be unearthed, until evidence finally forced the truth into the light. When the truth emerged, the community was horrified. People felt shocked, betrayed, and angry. Trust in local law enforcement shattered overnight. Families of honest officers were heartbroken, wondering how their colleagues could hide such a crime. News reports, interviews, and documentaries spread the story across the state. Citizens questioned how a young officer could be murdered by someone in uniform, and how the department had let it stay secret for 12 years. The revelation left the town struggling to comprehend the betrayal. Shock and outrage replaced comfort, as the reality of corruption inside the force sank in. The idea that a police officer was murdered, not by strangers but by her own brothers in uniform, shook the entire town. People struggled to accept the betrayal. Families, neighbors, and colleagues felt fear and disbelief. The streets whispered with anger and confusion. Meetings, conversations, and even schools were filled with the weight of the revelation. Citizens demanded answers. For the officers who remained honest, pride mixed with sorrow. The town could no longer view law enforcement as fully trustworthy. The crime's scope, method, and secrecy left lasting scars on the community's sense of safety. With all the evidence lined up, financial records, forensic analysis, witness statements, and machinery logs, investigators finally confirmed the chilling truth. The crime was an inside job. The young officer had been targeted, lured, murdered, and hidden by those she trusted. 12 years of silence ended with undeniable proof. Arrests, charges, and official reports followed. The task force had pieced together every detail. The patrol car, the tire marks, and the documents told the story of betrayal and murder. Justice was now possible. The official breakthrough brought closure to the case and marked a turning point for the department and the town. After years of silence, new witnesses came forward. They revealed what they knew, confirming the investigators' suspicions. With this testimony, authorities finally had enough evidence to act. The corrupt officer, once trusted in uniform, was arrested. The town held its breath as news spread. Families, colleagues, and neighbors waited anxiously, hoping that justice would finally reach the young officer's family. Police carefully processed the arrest, making sure the evidence was solid. For the first time in over a decade, it seemed possible that the truth would not only be known, but that someone would be held accountable for the betrayal and murder. The trial captured the attention of the entire town. Courtroom walls held tense silence as prosecutors laid out the story: corruption, bribes, betrayal, and murder. Every witness painted a chilling picture of what happened that night. Reporters broadcast details of the case nationwide. People listened in disbelief as the plan to lure, kill, and bury the officer was revealed. The courtroom became a place of confrontation, where secrets long buried were finally exposed. Citizens, officers, and families of law enforcement alike felt shock and anger. The trial forced the community to confront a reality they had never imagined: that the crime came from within. The officer's mother took the stand, holding tightly to her daughter's badge. Her voice shook, but she spoke clearly about the young woman her daughter had been. She described her bravery, dedication, and love for her job. Tears streamed down her face as she told the jury about the pain of 12 years without answers. She begged for justice, sharing how her daughter would never have abandoned her post or run away. The courtroom fell silent, moved by her courage and grief. Her words reminded everyone present of the human cost of betrayal, corruption, and the young life stolen so cruelly. The jury returned with a verdict: guilty. The courtroom erupted in emotion. Relief, grief, and disbelief washed over the family and attendees. For the first time in over a decade, the family felt justice, though the victory was bittersweet. Tears, hugs, and whispered thanks filled the room. The corrupt officer was led away, finally held accountable for the murder and betrayal. The community began to understand the depth of the crime and the courage of the young patrol officer. It was a long-awaited moment, a turning point where the truth triumphed over silence, even if the wounds could never fully heal. Even with the conviction, the damage could not be erased. Trust in the department remained fragile. Fellow officers struggled to rebuild credibility in the eyes of the community. The family's grief never fully healed. Memories of the betrayal lingered, and the pain of losing a daughter and colleague haunted every anniversary, every holiday. The town slowly tried to move forward, but the shadow of corruption remained a warning. People remembered the young officer, not only for her death, but also for what her loss revealed about the dangers of silence and the cost of exposing the truth. The officer was added to memorials for fallen law enforcement. Her name, badge, and story were displayed for all to see. Fellow officers saluted her courage, recognizing the bravery she showed in standing against corruption. Ceremonies honored her service, and colleagues spoke openly about her sacrifice. The recognition served as both a tribute and a lesson. New recruits learned her story in training, understanding the risks and responsibilities of law enforcement. Her life and death became a symbol of integrity, a reminder that standing up for the truth can be dangerous, yet necessary, and that such courage deserves lasting respect. A marker was placed near the stretch of highway where she vanished. Flowers, small tokens, and notes began to appear as locals stopped to remember her. Travelers, neighbors, and fellow officers paused, reflecting on her life and the tragedy of her death. The marker became a quiet shrine, a physical reminder of courage, loss, and the long path to justice. Families of law enforcement saw it as a place of mourning and respect. The road, once a site of fear, now carried the weight of memory and honor. Her story became part of the town's landscape, both as history and as a warning. Her story spread far beyond the town. Television programs, documentaries, and police training courses retold her case. Officers learned how silence and corruption could destroy lives. The young patrolwoman's courage became a teaching moment for new generations. She was remembered not for the way she died, but for the way she stood up to wrongdoing, even when it cost her everything. Her legacy lived on in every discussion of integrity, bravery, and justice. Communities, law enforcement, and families recognized her sacrifice. The memory of her courage continued to inspire, warning that the truth must be protected, no matter the danger.